أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah to send His greatest peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah for all the blessings He has given us, and the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated, and loyal on the path of our Master after the Prophet, the Commander of the Faithful, the Prince of the Believers, the Protector of the Prophet and His message, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We praise Allah for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, my dear respected brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight we continue on the conversation of the vision of a virtuous community. Inshallah, what we're going to be focusing on tonight is continuing from all the past conversations that we've had and focusing a little bit more of how do all of these matters that we've spoken about tie together in the sense of how we look at ourselves as a foundation and how we look at everything else that's around us, especially from a societal perspective. Some of the questions that we're going to be covering tonight are, for one, what is the difference between inherited and choice identity? Is there a difference between identity that you inherit and those things that are simply given to you by mere virtue of you being born to a certain family, and an identity that you choose, something that we could refer to as choice identity? The second question being, what is the difference between brotherhood and equality? Does brotherhood apply to certain categories of people, and then equality, does that only apply to other categories of people? And then finally, what are the four spheres of identity that we're going to be speaking about? Within this whole theme, as you can see from the title from the very beginning, Shi'ism, Islam, monotheism, and humanity, how our principle-based social identity and its layers can form the foundation for which we engage with the rest of our society, the rest of humanity. How do we look at humanity? How do we look at people that differ from us when it comes to their beliefs, their creed, and their way of life? Now, we're going to jump right into this and addressing the first question, which is inherited versus choice identity. When it comes to this specific question that we have, there are many layers of identity that you and I inherit from our parents, from our families, from our culture and our background. For example, ethnically, you may be Arab, you may be Persian, you may be Caucasian, you may be African, you may be Latino, Hispanic, etc. That's a type of identity, a racial or ethnic identity that you associate with that you don't have control over. The skin tone that you have, the color of your skin is not something that you have control over. However, it does have certain consequences for you in your social sphere. People may have preconceived notions and prejudices against somebody merely based on this category of an identity that's inherited and one that you don't have any choice of. The family that you're born into, the family name that you have, it may be a prominent name, it may be a name that is associated with scholars, associated with scientists, associated with entrepreneurs, with affluent people, with aristocrats, with people that have a history in government and bureaucracy, for example. And that's something that, again, you don't have control over, but it could have some benefits, and there could be some negative consequences from that with that mere affiliation. In some societies, some families are looked at by mere virtue of the name that they have, that, oh, this is not a family that is known to be successful. It's a cursed family. Some shows and some episodes that you may find will center around a family and the curse that this family has inherited from generation to the next, and the young men and women that belong to this family are just have no chance in the community that they're living in. Why? Because they come from a family that really nothing good comes out of that family. And to the contrary, you'll see this movement of willpower that comes to fight against what would be these negative consequences associated by these inherited identities that one would look on not so favorably. The willpower of the individual in their choice of their fate and how they're going to move forward in life, that, you know what, yes, this may be a name that I'm associated with or affiliated with, this may be the family that I'm born into, this may be the color of my skin, and in this community, this society, people don't look at me in the right way, they have prejudices against me, I may be from an ethnic background that is a minority. However, it is my choices, my beliefs, my values that are going to make it different for me. My work ethic may make it different for me in the result that I'm going to have, in the fate that I'm going to have in my life. That identity that I choose will be working for me instead of necessarily the ones that I've inherited that may work against me. Again, there may be some inherited identities, like we mentioned, the family, the race, the ethnicity, the background, the social circles that you've inherited from your parents, etc., that may work to your advantage. But what reigns supreme is the identity of choice. And the identity of choice is one that could be principle based and it could be other than principle based. It can be purpose driven, or it could be something driven by other means or other things like materialism, like wealth, fame, influence, power. That can also control a person or influence a person in the direction that they're taking in their life. For our purposes here in discussing identity and how we engage with our society, we're going to be talking about how we look at identity from a principle-based perspective. And that is our choice identity, in which we look through the lens of, I have my responsibility to myself as an individual, and I am choosing to be the way I want to be. I am choosing to live a lifestyle the way I want to live. I'm choosing to follow a certain norms, a code of ethics, doctrines that will have an influence and impact on the fate of my life. That choice identity is where we're basing this off of. And the principle-based identity that we're speaking of is derived from our creed and our religion. So theologically, I see the world in a certain lens. This is my worldview. This is the way I see it. From my beliefs and my principles, it allows me to speak to my family members in a certain way, treat my children in a certain way, give them the kindness and the sweetness that they need in order to grow up in a nurtured environment. For me to look at my neighbor and think about them before I think of somebody else, for example, because of their closeness and proximity to me, because of my code of ethics that I have in my theology, in my creed, in my religion that I follow. That affects the way I identify with him and the way I see myself in proximity to that individual. Why? Not because ethnically that I'm seeing this person and I'm, let's say I'm of Arab descent and this person is Caucasian or African American or Latino. If there's an ethnic affiliation there or an ethnic lens that I'm looking at, I don't have a connection or affiliation with this individual. Maybe I'm not going to help them if I'm merely looking based on that identity. Or let's say I'm living in a country and I'm not a citizen in that country. I'm not necessarily looking at, I'm contributing to this society as one who is a citizen or not. I'm not a citizen, so I may not necessarily want to contribute as much as I should. When I look at the lens of principle, there allows for me to have more commonality. And when we're seeing this principle-based identity, we're going to see a foundation for what we're going to be talking about in the second and third question, being brotherhood and equality, and then finally, the four spheres of identity. Now, there is a famous narration, the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, where he says in letter 53 of Nahj al-Balagha, in his instructions to his newly appointed governor, Malik al-Ashtar, which he appointed him to be the governor of Egypt towards the last part of Imam Ali's caliphate. And at this time, Imam Ali alayhi salam knew that Malik had a big task at hand when it came to ruling and governing over Egypt in an effective way. Imam Ali alayhi salam, as the commander of the faithful, he established a standard of just governance in which people would understand what is the right of a subject or a citizen living in a nation upon their leader, upon their governor? And what are the rights that the governor needs to make sure that he's caring for, and the style by which he leads these people and governs over them? And Imam Ali alayhi salam says in part in this letter, he says to Malik, "O Malik, do not be a ferocious beast over your subjects, your citizens. You are to treat people as one of two kinds, either your brother in faith or your equal in humanity." So Imam Ali alayhi salam establishes a foundation for us in the way the governor, the leader, should look at people. It's either a brother in faith or an equal in humanity. That's the lens that he establishes. And by a brother in faith, the word in Arabic is ad-din, so in religion. So this, regardless of school of thought, is applied here, where whether a person belongs to one theological or one jurisprudential school of thought or other, that the commonality in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah was the standard by which Amir al-Mu'mineen told his governor, look at people this way, he's your brother, meaning take care of this individual as if he's family. And when we look at family, especially in the holy month of Ramadan, even if we are lacking in our commitments to our family, we realize that we still love them more than anything else. Even when we're falling short in our obligations, that really when push comes to shove, we would sacrifice for them and we would do for them like more than we would do for our own selves. Because your family member, your brother, your mother, your father, your sister, regardless of the fights or the arguments, the disagreements that you've had, the misunderstandings that have taken place over the years, you know at the end of the day that you put your family before yourself. And that's something that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, when he's telling us, this is either your brother in faith, where you'll take care of this individual as if you're taking care of yourself or even better, or or if not a brother, then at the very least, they're an equal in humanity. نَظِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَلْقِ. An equal in humanity gives us the basic understanding that you and I, the way we look at ourselves, the way we look at each other is, I'm not better than you, and you're not better than me. Simply put, regardless of who this individual is. Again, look at the inherited identities or even the principle-based identities that we're looking at. You're not better than me, and I'm not better than you. The only difference that comes between individuals when it comes to the judgment of character or level or personality is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the judge. Of course, we know our obligations. We have to uphold our own obligations before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a standard of ethics that we know that we have to engage with one another, and that if we see injustices or wrong things in our community, at the very least, that we're not going to be looking fondly upon those things. If we can make an effective change happen in our community, we definitely have to strive for that. And at the very least, if we can't make an effective change happen, then we have to have at least in our hearts a feeling and a sense of not wanting that to happen, a sense of being repulsed by what's taking place. If there is a negative or a sin or a bad thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like, then we have to align ourselves in the same way. Similarly, when there's things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes and loves, then we have to align ourselves that way. And what Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam did for us is he recognized for his governor, this is the way you need to look at people. Look at people this way so that you're consistent in your leadership and your guidance of these people, and you continue to be just in your dealings with them. Now, when it comes to the 4 spheres of identity and understanding how do these 4 spheres work with one another, it's important for us to bring it all together with a basic understanding of our core identity as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Someone may come and say, well, if you're looking at your core identity, is it not that your core identity is that you are a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that you are a servant of God? Absolutely. That is absolutely true. From a theological perspective, that core identity of an individual and the way that we look at even Shi'ism itself as in being followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the ultimate purpose and the core of that identity is being a servant of God. And we mentioned that from the very beginning of this lecture series, that the purpose of the individual, of us as a creation, is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But from a socio-religious standpoint, in which we're looking at how does our identity engage with the rest of society, and how do we see ourselves from the vantage point of a principle-based identity, a principle-based worldview, how do we engage with everybody else that differs from us, recognizing the social impact of having a different creed or a different faith or a different belief system? How do we engage with everybody else on that basis? How do we look at us and the commonalities that exist with everybody else? The four spheres of identity on a very high level is the following. One, the core identity in being a follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Secondly, immediately above that is the identity of Islam. Thirdly, the identity in monotheism and the belief of La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God. And then fourth, the identity in humanity. Now, let's take each one bit by bit. If you'll notice, the greatest sphere here is the identity in humanity. That encompasses all of these spheres. The core sphere of identity is encompassed by Islam. As followers of Ahlul Bayt, there's great significance that we have in being followers of Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because if you look at the very distinction that we made from the beginning in this narration that we mentioned of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, it is that system of just governance, of just dealings, of knowing our ethics from the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that he emphasized, turn to Ali ibn Abi Talib, turn to Amir al-Mu'mineen, that truth is with him, al-haqqu ma Ali wa Ali ma al-haqq, that truth is with Ali and Ali is with truth. It turns wherever he turns. That I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. Whoever wishes to enter the city must enter through its gate. If we wish to enter the Kaaba, if we wish to get to there and be within that system, we need to understand that comes through Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, that comes through the direction of the Prophet. And again, emphasizing that our attachment to the personality of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the personalities of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam is not one that simply because we belong to the school of thought we are emphasizing them. To the contrary, it's rather because it is an emphasis by direction of the Holy Prophet. And because he is nothing but revelation, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ, he does not speak out of whim, he is nothing but revelation. We turn to Ali ibn Abi Talib and we see what is the guidance that we have in order to understand how do we truly hold on to the Holy Prophet. He said, two weighty things after me, hold on to both of them, the book of God and my family, atrati, and you will never stray after me. You see, at the time of the Prophet, because Islam was still in its still in its early days, it was a new religion, it was a new faith, it was a new community. The Prophet emphasized to people in his farewell, in his last dying days, he would tell them, listen, I know that there may be some fear, some worry of straying after me, and I don't want you to stray after me. So this is your key to making sure that you hold on and you do not stray after me. The key is the book of God and my Ahlul Bayt. Hold on to them, you're good. Now, this again goes to our relationship with both of them, emphasizing that the Quran needs to be a part of our life and that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam need to be part and parcel of our life. With one, you're not going to be successful alone. Why? Because they complement one another, they supplement one another. They are part of one vision, one mission, one strategy, one vision for that virtuous community that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala initiated from the very first days of creation through Adam alayhi salam in his will to make him the viceroy on earth. If we look at the completion of faith and understand that this was the mission and the vision all along, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us all of this from prophet after prophet and messenger after messenger, and then the messengers would be culminated in the personality of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then the guardianship of that message that was completed, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet on the day of Ghadir Khum that today I have completed for you your religion. in you delivering this public news to the people and telling them that you are to turn to Ahlul Bayt, you are to turn to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen. This emphasis is so important. Why? Because once you turn away from him and you turn away from the individuals who are the guardians of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that's when the slippery slope begins. That's when you see the disagreements across history. That's when you see the oppression and injustices that took place. And that's where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, though some people didn't follow him, there still was an emphasis on protecting what? That body of Islam. Now into the second sphere of identity. When it comes to that second sphere of identity, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, from a socio-religious standpoint, we have an affinity to Islam, a connection to Islam, just as much as anybody else that calls themselves a Muslim. And this is extremely important for us to remind ourselves with. If you were to call yourself a Shi'i, a Muwali, a Mu'min, a believer, etc., and we're going to, inshallah, talk more about this with regards to the different attributes of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the different titles of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, what they mean, and what it truly means to hold this title or affiliation as a follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. But as their followers, we have a connection to Islam just like anybody else. Tashayyu' is part and parcel of the Islamic narrative. Do not remove yourself from that narrative and making it seem as if this is a movement, a school of thought, a faction that is different than the rest of Islam. And what I mean by that is Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam did not come as a reformer in the faith. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the one who conserved and preserved the message of the Holy Prophet. If anything that was going away from that message, it was anything but Amir al-Mu'mineen. If anything was coming to change or make adaptations to that message, it was anything but Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The most pristine and pure sense of the message of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa came through Ali Muhammad. So when it comes to the narrative of Islam, as a follower of Ahlul Bayt, don't detach yourself from that. You need to stay connected in that second sphere. And I remember in one of our visits to one of the grand scholars in the holy city of Najaf, and this is something that, like we mentioned previously yesterday, having this connection with our scholars, having this connection with our seminaries is so important, because these are individuals and these are institutions that have protected and safeguarded the heritage of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam over 1,000 years. When you see the movement of our seminaries going across from city to city, from country to country, depending on the circumstances of their time, the scholars that sacrificed their lives in order to make sure that the teachings of Ahlul Bayt were preserved. And this, again, is not limited to any geographical area. And this is the beauty of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, is that the way they worked was not limited to any specific area, was not limited to any specific group of people. It could have been the people of Koroush in Mecca and Medina. It could have been the Kufans in Iraq. It could have been the Persians in Tus. It could have been the Arabs in the different groups of Yemen, of Jabal Amil, across the world. And even with the Byzantine Empire and people coming in from the Byzantine Empire and engaging with them, companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam that lived there and continued to have a relationship with the Imam, visiting and coming and going. This is so significant for us to realize how deep our heritage with our scholars and with Ahlul Bayt is, and that it's not limited to any geographical area. Be it in visiting the shrines in Iraq, in Iran, in Syria, across the Middle East, and having this connection with our scholars and with the seminaries, be it in the holy city of Qom, in the holy city of Najaf. It's so important for us to continue to have this connection with our scholars, with the seminary, to remember how deep our heritage is, and to remember that we belong to something that is greater than any one individual. And we belong to a heritage that is 1,000 years in its richness and its depth. So in the holy city of Najaf, we're visiting one of the offices of the Grand Maraja and the Grand Ayatollahs. And one of the conversations that takes place is a question and answer going back and forth between one of the young brothers that was really engaged with the conversation, the talk that the Sayyid had given. And the Marja responds to one of the questions and stops him and he says, make sure that when you're speaking of Amir al-Mu'mineen in the countries that you're going back to, in the West, in the United States, in the UK, in Canada, etc., when you're talking about Tashayya, when you're talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen, do not make it as it's something that's separate from Islam. When you say that you are a follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, don't stop there. Make sure that your identity is connected to Islam, that you are a Muslim, that you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah just like every other person that calls themselves a Muslim. This is hugely important when it comes to the way we see ourselves and our narrative as followers of Ahlul Bayt, because some people may look at you and say, as a Shia, as a follower of Ahlul Bayt, you don't belong to Islam, or that you're a faction, an offshoot of Islam, or that you're a small minority that doesn't belong. And of course, now we know with our brothers and sisters from other schools of thought, that's not what reigns in the majority of their minds. But in these exchanges that we may have or may not have, but need to be aware of, is if somebody is looking at you in this way, how much do you contribute to that view? The way we contribute to that view is the way we hold ourselves. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, his heritage through the rest of the Imams, for example, Imam al-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him, when he said, كُونُوا دُعَاةً لَنَا بِغَيْرِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, be a call unto us without your tongue. Be you. As a follower of Ahlul Bayt, what does you stand for? What do you make up? Are you in your neighborhood the best neighbor? Are you in your office the best professional, the best colleague? Are you in your family the best member of your family in giving and sacrifice and taking care of others? Who are you? What are you? Why are you? Where did you come from? Where are you? And where are you going? That is a constant reminder that we need to have for ourselves. And going into the four spheres of identity allows us to remain in context for ourselves, especially in our dealings with one another. Because we know that people have rights on us just as much as we have rights on other people. Just as much as we want people to respect us, observe our rights, and not transgress against our rights and our liberties, whether it be a relationship that we have with the country that we're living in, within the system of rule of law, the government infringing on our rights. We have constitutional liberties and we want to make sure that the government does not infringe on them. Beautiful, of course. That's something that you've entered into as a social contract with the government that you're living under. And those rights need to be observed. In the same way as citizens of a country, or as believers in a faith, or as human beings in general, we have rights and obligations to one another that we need to observe. And we can't be heedless of that. Because once we're heedless of that, then that principle-based identity that we chose for ourselves, that begins to wither away without even us realizing it. Why? Because when our actions and our conduct come contrary to what we say we believe and the principles that we have, then we look in the mirror and we realize, I guess I'm not the person that I thought I was. I guess I'm not the person who my parents raised. I guess I'm not the person that I've been planning to be all these years. The four spheres of identity, and continuing further, we'll notice that even after the sphere of Islam, the third sphere of being monotheism is so important for us to pay attention to. And one of the examples that we have in this relationship with other people who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe in the oneness of God, our Jewish and Christian brothers and sisters. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam established for us, and this applies to both the third and fourth sphere, that either the person is your brother in faith or you're equal in humanity. So we're dealing in the third and fourth sphere, we're dealing as equals regardless. But now even further, you have the conduct of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the tradition of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon them, how they engage with people that were different than them in their belief, whether they were Jews or they were Christians. Take, for example, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, who at a number of times throughout his history, in the earliest days of Islam, not only when he was one who would face communities that wanted to fight against him, and he had a huge community of a Muslim following behind him, but when he was a man by himself, in the earliest days when it was just Khadija and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhum as-salam, that they were with him, and it was just them alone. The Holy Prophet would face situations in which people from other faiths, not just the pagans of Quraysh, but people from other faiths would come and they would abuse him, they would assault him, and he would just give them a smile. Take this story of an elderly woman that goes into the market and she's carrying a bunch of groceries, so many different items, she can barely hold them with her two hands. A young man comes up to her and tells her, "My dear lady, can I help you with your things? Can I be of some assistance to you?" She says, "Oh, thank you, young man. You're so kind. Generosity like this is so very rare to find. Here, grab this bag and grab this bag." And she's giving them the groceries and the things that she just bought from the market to hold for her. And he walks with her to her home, and the whole time he's smiling. She's going on and on about things that are going on in the community, things that are going on in the state of their society, and she's particularly focusing on the personality of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. But she's not praising him. She's telling this young man, this Muhammad, he's misled people. He's making people think that no matter if you're black, you're white, you're young, you're old, you're a slave, you're a master, whoever you are, wherever you come from, men, women alike, that you're all free and that you're all equal and you have rights. I mean, this is crazy talk here. I mean, we have levels in our society. We have people that are better than other people. Listen, young man, you've been so nice to me this whole time. I want to make sure that you don't be led astray by this guy, this magician of sorts named Muhammad. Stay away from this guy. If you hear about him, stay away from him. The young man continues to smile. Finally, he gets to her doorstep and she realizes, she says, I've been talking so much about how much I care about you as a young man. You're so nice, and I want you to make sure you stay away from this Muhammad personality if you ever come across him. I forgot to ask you, and I'm so sorry for being rude. I didn't even get your name. What's your name? And he smiles and he says, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. That was the Prophet himself during that whole journey in which he was being attacked by a woman, assaulted by a woman through her verbal attacks. And he was just holding her things, holding her weight, and smiling along the way. This would continue, again, through every member of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. An example of Amir al-Mu'mineen during the era of his rulership, in which he was the Khalifa himself, even though it was only about 4.5 years that Amir al-Mu'mineen would rule as the Khalifa. He was monumental in the things that he stood for, monumental in the lessons that we're able to derive from Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, we mentioned letter 53 from Nahj al-Balagha. Go to Nahj al-Balagha and realize that the majority of the letters, the sayings, and the sermons of Nahj al-Balagha are coming from that short period in his life, during that 4.5-year period. Go and look and see the experiences of the Imam and the way he saw the community, the way he engaged with people, the way he spoke to them. Amir al-Mu'mineen, as the Khalifa, is walking in the market. People aren't able to detect him, aren't able to know that it's him. Why? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen always walked humbly amongst people. He didn't have an entourage. He wasn't, glittered up with the fanciest of clothing. He didn't have people that were carrying him on their shoulders. He was walking like anybody else. Common clothes, common man. Walking in the market. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam sees an elderly man begging. The elderly man is going from one person to the next, saying, please help me. I don't have any money. Do you have some spare change? I need to buy some food. I haven't eaten in days. I barely have clothes on my back. I have no place to sleep. I have no family. I have no one to support me. The man is going from person to person begging, and everyone is ignoring him. Everyone is not even giving him the time of day. Amir al-Mu'mineen is off to the side watching all of this happen. And he looks and he says, Ma hada? What is this? Like, what's going on here? So somebody responds and says, oh, he's just the Christian. To that, our narration would say that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, the color in his face would change. He would become so angry that he would say, I'm not moving from this place until this man is taken care of. How dare you use him up in his youth and then neglect him in his old age? Go to the treasury and take care of his needs at once. Now people knew this was Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is the commander of the faithful. And he's speaking in this tone and saying, how dare you neglect this man because of his religion, because he believes differently than you believe? How can you use him up and then neglect him in his old age? Amir al-Mu'mineen was angered, so much so, by an individual who didn't even share his faith. There wasn't a litmus test with the imams or with the Prophet where, oh, are you a Muslim? Then I'll take care of you. Are you a believer in God? Okay, then I'll take care of you. Are you a follower of ours? Okay, then I'll take care of you. No. Every human being had a sanctity that had to be observed, respected, and honored at all times. If someone was mistreated, it didn't matter what they believed. It didn't matter what faith they belonged to. Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam were there to take care of them. Now again to the final and fourth sphere of identity, being humanity. That you and I, regardless of our faith, of our creed, when we look at one another, we have an affinity and a connection to each other in our very creation. And this isn't just said in a general sense, but rather as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, our mission in life is not only to take care of our own from this socio-religious standpoint in this core identity, but rather it is this core identity that allows us to take care of everybody else. Our mission as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is to protect humanity at large. Why? Because every human being has the potential to be a part of the virtuous community. Every human being has the ability to be their best and highest and truest self. Every human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created every human being fi ahsani taqweem, in the best forms. And then it is our choice whether we want to stay at the best form or relegate ourselves to the lowest of the low. And you and I can help one another on that path to getting towards that virtuous community, to becoming our best and highest self, to realize our responsibilities to one another and take care of each other. As human beings, Amir al-Mu'mineen established this for us. The Holy Prophet established this for us as being that mercy to mankind. Connect all of this together and understand how significant this is, and a formulated thought for us to have this worldview in the way we see ourselves in humanity. That you and I are equal. That you and I have to take care of each other. That you and I have to be there for each other. That you and I, again, regardless of faith, regardless of religion, regardless of creed, need to look at one another as one family of humanity. Now, when you're looking at the spheres, there's commonalities that increase as you go closer and closer and closer to the center. Just like when you belong to a city and a community and a neighborhood and a home, there's going to be commonalities that increase as you go closer and closer and closer. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take care of my neighborhood. I have to take care of my community. I have to take care of my city. And I have to make sure that I'm thinking about the people that are outside my home. But I have to make sure my home is strong to begin with. I have to make sure that my family is taken care of and they understand their obligation as well when it comes to the greater society. and they understand their role and their identity when it comes to everybody that's around them. Let's make sure, as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we continue in this commitment, not only to the rest of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the rest of the Muslims, the rest of the believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to humanity at large. It is this core identity that we have as followers of Ahlul Bayt that allows us to understand the world in this view. And truly, in all genuineness and sincerity, this is the way we see the world. This is the way that we look at humanity. This is the way that we look at our neighbors and our colleagues. There's no other way. Because Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam made it clear to us that this is who you are. This is how you believe. And this is how you see and engage and act with one another. Alhamdulillah, brothers and sisters, in our presentation, we've distinguished the difference between identities that are inherited and our choice identity, which our focus is a principle-based identity. We've distinguished the significance of brotherhood and equality and how that reigns in our ethics and the way we deal with one another. And then finally, the layers to our identity and the multiple spheres that we belong to and the connectivity that we have as human beings. From Shi'ism to Islam, monotheism to humanity, we understand how all of this connects with one another. هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على نبينا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.